Okay, now first of all, I will ask from the previous lecture. Have you revised it?
Yes, little bit.
So first of all, tell me about the some characteristics of different programming languages. What makes a programming language a good programming language?
There are different type of languages. Number one, Charity, Simply, and United. This program language provide kind of
I don't want the explanation. Just tell me in points, like the headings only. Like what are the characteristics? Don't explain them. If I need, I'll ask for the explanation then.
okay. Number one is Charity, Simplicity, and United.
It is clarity.
Okay, clarity. Okay.
Ji.
Then Spot for abstraction,
Okay.
programming environment,
Okay.
and uh, ease of program verification usability.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by programming environment? What is programming environment?
It means that we are facilitating, maintaining, or multi-version of program protect.
Repeat it, please.
Facilitating, maintaining, or multi-version of program software, or speeding up creation and testing special testing patching.
What is orthogonality?
Orthogonality that changing A does not mean change B. Means if we have radio, we can change radio, but volume will not increase or decrease.
Okay. So, are Python and C++ similar or not? Yes or no?
Yes, they are a little bit similar, but
Python and
by
C++.
no, sorry, no, they are not similar.
And what about JavaScript and Java?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Now, what is a low-level language?
I think yes. Low language is easy to understand and super duper fast. But it is difficult for human and easy for computer.
Okay. And in which code or in which format they are written? Low language is easy
Yes.
to understand for a computer, but in which format it is written? Can we read it or understand it?
Like we use assembly and machine code like this.
What is machine code? I have given you the example that in which form it is written.
Machine code is like 01.
Yes, good. Okay, which language will we use to analyze the data?
Python and MATLAB.
What about SQL, which is the most famous and most used programming language for
I
database?
think yes, that is also
Yeah, keep in mind SQL
that is
will
also
be
used.
on number one when you are talking about data.
Okay.
Okay, what we use for
Okay.
websites?
JavaScript and ATHE and
H
HTML and CSS.
HTML.
Yeah, HTML.
Okay, and what are for games?
For games, uh, CC++, Python, and JavaScript. And
C sharp.
C sharp.
Okay, good. Now we will start with today's lecture. Okay, now today is the sixth lecture of Intro to Computer Programming. Now in this, we will focus on object-oriented programming, OOP language. Okay, now this is the one language that we will be focused on. First, we will see that what is object-oriented language, explain the characteristics of object-oriented programming. Its short form is OOP, double OP. Then we will see that describe the advantages of using OOP. What are the advantages of using OOP? Why we are using OOP? What are the main causes that OOP is made for? Then explain, these are the some parts in object-oriented programming called encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. We will also explain these three parts also. Okay, now let's start with OOP. Now, what is OOP? Object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm based on the concepts of object. Now, it is, I think, clear from the word that it is object-oriented programming. Means, what does oriented means? Oriented means that it is fitted in it like that. Object-oriented, object-based programming, in which there is a concept of objects. We can make objects, or we can introduce objects, or we can add more objects in that. An object can be anything, okay, which may contain data in the form of field, often known as attributes, and code in the form of procedures. As I said, objects can be anything. It can be data, it can be some fields, it can any attribute. Attribute means anything, any like furniture, or let's say cars, or anything. Attribute means a solid attribute. And it can be a code in the form of procedures. It can be a lot of procedures that are interlinked, often known as methods. For example, a person is an object which has certain properties. What are the properties of a person? It is height, gender, age, etc. It also had certain methods such as move, talk, and so on. So, object, this is the basic unit of object-oriented programming, that is both data and function that operate on data are bundled as a unit called an object. Now, if we just introduce an object, so our program won't be like very effective unless until we perform something on that object, right? It's not that we introduce an object, just see this is an object. No, what will we do with that object if we don't have anything else to show with that object? For example, if we are showing an object like a person, so what we going to do with that person? We have to tell them what is the person, why is that person, what is the attribute, or what are the advantages, or what are the specifications of that object. So, and what is class? When you define a class, you define a blueprint for an object. This doesn't actually define any data, but it does define what the class name means. That is what an object of the class will consist of, and what operations can be performed on such object. Now, when we define an object, now then we have to define its attributes. For example, what are we going to do with that object? If it is a person, there will be a person's what is his or her height, what is the gender, what is the age, what that person do. He moves, he talks, or he is some athlete, he is some businessman. All the attributes of that person will be all the methods, and that methods will called a class. We will make a class for each and everything. Do you understand the concept of objects and class?
Yes, miss.
Okay, here now be careful. If you don't understand anything, any single thing, then ask me right on that slide, because they all are interlinked. So you have to ask it right now. Now, what are the uses or benefits of object-oriented programming? Object-oriented programming models complex things are reproducible, simple structures. Now, what do? We take an object, we make different classes of that object, so we could understand each and every part of that object. So, it makes a complex thing. For example, it's about a car. Now, car has different models. You can see is what is the car color, what is the model, what is the model year, how much it is used, which engine is used, or how many seats persons can fit into that car, how many space is there. Now, itself, a car is a complex thing, because in the car there are a lot more to explain. So, what this language do? This language explains each and every part of that object that needs to be told, that asked to be told. So reusable. Object-oriented programming objects can be used across programs. Now, these objects can obviously use across any programs, any methods, allows for class-specific behavior through polymorphism. Now, polymorphism is a thing that I will explain later, but it is that you make different classes and a for a specific behavior. Like you make a class for a model in which you will tell or your user will enter the model of that car. So that class is specifically made for that object's model. You cannot enter anything else in that. You cannot enter the color or you cannot enter the speed or anything else. So easier to debug, classes often contain all applicable information to them. Now, when you will run the program, now you will see that everything is going good, but there is some mistake in the model section, or either model number is not showing or it is not a good display. Then you definitely know which part you have to go and correct your code, isn't it? Right?
Yes, Miss.
It is more secure, protects information through encapsulation. Encapsulation, again, I will explain later. So all the information is very good and in a form that we can easily find mistakes. We can easily correct our code, and it is not like once code or once classes code is used in another class when it is not needed. All the code is written in the blocks where it is needed, and it is easy to find and a secure information. Now, what are characteristics of object-oriented programming? Number one, development. Object-oriented development. The first characteristics of object-oriented programming is its emphasis is on object. The most basic form of OOP is when a developer defines objects. Now, if we don't define objects, we can't explain its attributes. We can't write its classes. So first thing is how to develop a code, an object oriented code. The basic thing is we have to first declare an object. The most basic form of object oriented programming is when a developer defines objects. These objects can be used to define business rule, exchange data, and even control what happens in the programming environment. Now, all the attributes of that object obviously is specified with the object. All you can say object is the main stem or a root through which all the branches or the stem is dependent. Object is the main thing. Now, WOD is the process by which programmers create these objects. They create a blueprint that defines how these objects will behave when they interact with each other. This blueprint is called the interface. Now, what does blueprint means? Blueprint means you can call it like a copy. That it's not an original thing. It is a copy through which you can understand about that object very well. Now, how can an object can be defined? It can be defined through the theory as well, but the interface, the like how we see that thing, the interface, that is called blueprint. The blueprint is created by specifying the methods that an object will be able to perform when it interacts with other objects. These methods are often referred to as functions. Other aspects of the object that can be defined via the interface, including properties, which are the attributes of the object that can be accessed by other objects. The interface between objects is not static. It can be changed by the programmers to account for a new interaction between the objects. Now, if there are more than one object, there will be one or more interfaces, but all interfaces will be interlinked. Now, as you can see in the diagram, there is a view 1, view 2, and view 3. Now, these three are interfaces. Okay. Now, this is a separate object. You can call this a separate and this a separate object. And this all is in a one interface because these three are interlinked. This is user view level. User will see these three, but what is behind them? Behind them, there is some logical view that how we will show these three in one interface or in a one coding. What data is stored? Which data needs to be stored? Which data needs to be shown? This all will be selected in a logical view. Then there is a physical view. What will there will be in the physical view? It is how data is stored. Obviously, first is SQL. Through SQL, which attributes or which things are to be needed to store, which are the most important things that a user should know about that object. And there can be some optional data also that may be used in future. Then it will go to the logical view, which is the most important data that is need to be shown or need to be stored, and then there will be the view. Okay, that is the first form of object oriented development. Clear?
Yes, miss.
Okay, next we have encapsulation. Now, what is encapsulation? Another characteristics of object-oriented programming is that it emphasizes the encapsulation of data and functionality within the objects. What it combines all the data and all the functionality which is linked with that objects. Objects are defined with specific functionality that governs the interaction between objects. Encapsulation of data is an extremely important aspect of OOP. This is because it prevents hacker from modifying data that is stored in the database. If hackers are able to modify the data in the database, it could have disastrous effect on the organization. Now, encapsulation means that collecting and specifying the data and the method in one thing. Now, what does capsule mean? What does a capsule contains? Capsule contains all of the ingredient or the medicine that you need. There is no need of that plastic thing. Okay. But what is important in the capsule? Inside that capsule, which medicine is placed. Right? So, encapsulation means all the variables methods are combined in a group in a thing that is called a class. So no one can take the data out of that class. No one could hack that data because we have specified all the attributes separately and we have named them. So if someone is interested in what he can do, maybe he can steal one part of that object or the other part, but he cannot take all of the object from us. That is why the hacking is or the cheating on code is really difficult when we use OOP, because in database we have different places for all of the objects or all of the attributes. We have data saved in all separate files, so no one can attack on the files at one time. Encapsulation is a process by which programmers isolate data with the object. It prevents hackers from viewing the details of the data and the database structure itself. Encapsulation and abstraction of data are the two main components of OOP paradigm that improves security. They are essential to any programming framework that is intended to store sensitive data. Now, do you understand the concept of encapsulation?
Yes, miss.
Or do you have any question?
Can you explain abuse of data? What is that? Abstraction of data.
Abstraction of data. Abstraction of data means, okay, encapsulation and abstraction of data are the two main components of the OOP. Now, encapsulation, abstraction of data, that finding of the data to be abstract, to be constant, to be fixed, the final data. Because if you collect the data in a random form, it won't be an abstract and accurate data. It means the accuracy of the data and the combining of that all accurate data are the two main components. First of all, data should be correct to be accurate. Second, it should be saved. That is encapsulation. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now abstraction. Now here I will tell you main that what is abstraction. This is the process of creating reusable objects that are designed to standardize common business logic. An important part of abstraction is the way that the objects are used. They should be in a consistent manner across many different applications. This helps to standardize the logic and make it easier to maintain across various programs. Now, you can say that abstraction is creating a useful or reusable objects. Means there is an object, it has some attributes, and we place these objects, for example, we make attributes like that, it can be reused again. The code could be reused. We can reuse their attributes anywhere in the code or outside if we want. We should have that specific name for each and every attribute that we can reuse, and it should make the logic also. For example, if you see in the picture that there is a person. Now, what does a person contains? Person has its identity like first name, last name, skills, job. Okay. Now, and then what does the job contain? Job may contain company, position, salary. Now, does the job will contain the first name or last name or skill? Does it suits the job attribute?
No.
Yes. Now, this abstraction that the data or the attribute should be connected to the object. It shouldn't be out of the object that it doesn't make any sense. So the data should be accurate, or attributes should be so accurate that it could define the object really well. It encourages collaboration between different parties, make it easier to create programs that integrate disparate data sets and functionality. It is possible to create applications that are much more scalable and maintainable than traditional non-OOP application. Now, obviously, if you're making some attribute, person is an object, and somewhere other we have another object called job. Now, we have to link two objects together. Now, what will we do? We have the absolute correct information about these two objects, right? Now, how we will link them? Because every person may have or may not, I will not say may have some job, or he is finding job, or he may find a job. So job is the main attribute. So we can make this attribute another object to link them. So if we want any data about a person whose name is whatever, maybe it's a John, whose name is John, and he do a developer job. These are the two conditions. Now, what will the program will do? Program will first enter into the person's territory, person's object. He will see whose name is John. He will select the John person. He will show his first name, last name, skills. Then he will go in the job. Now, job is directly linked, job's description is directly linked to another object. There he will find that a person named John has this job. Now, there is written the developer in this data. In person's data, there is written that person John is a developer. So, he will see, okay, he's a developer, then what is the company, what is the position, what is the salary? So he will got all the information about that person and his job also. So this is the encapsulation and abstractions best example. It is combining two objects and giving the right information that is demanded or that has been asked. Understand?
Yes, miss.
Then there is classes and objects. Now, what is class and what is object? A class is where the blueprint for an object is defined. The blueprint defines the method, attributes, and other aspects of the objects. Objects are created from class. A class is also known as blueprint for an object. It defines properties, methods, and other aspects associated with the object. Objects are created from class. A class is essentially a blueprint for an object. It defines properties, methods, and other aspects associated with the object. Now, what are classes and what are objects? I will show you here through this code. First, there is a class called a box. Okay. Now, there is some data members of that box, and some is private, that this information is private. And this data is a public. That depends on what the program is. Now, there is box. Now, there can be, what will be the objects? It can be box 1, box 2, box 3. For example, if you have, I will say, the stationery department, you called it class stationery. Now, what does stationery contains? Stationery contains pencils, that can be in box 1, erasers, box 2, and maybe the paints, box 3. Now, you also know that pencils has many types. There are many companies. It can be further classified according to the companies. That will be the pencil's attribute. Razors can be of different shapes or different companies. And obviously, paints can be single or a sets and anything. Now, do you understand the concept of class and objects?
Yes, miss.
Good. Then further we have inheritance and composition. Now, what is inheritance? What do you mean by that term? Inheritance.
Some property given by our parents or
Yes,
our
something that is continued through one thing, through one object, right? So, inheritance is a process of allowing one object to create another. It essentially allows an object to inherit the properties and methods and other aspects of other objects. Composition is the process of combining multiple objects to create a new and unique object. It essentially allows programmer to reuse the elements that are specific to other objects to create a new unique object. Combining object and inheriting their properties is one of the most important aspects of OOP. It is the way that objects are created and used in any programming language. It is the foundation of OOP. Now, what is mainly OOP considered for? It can inherit the properties or the attributes or the explanation. Like we can use one properties into another, or we can expand them, like the stem expand their branches, but the main thing is that stem, right? Now here's an example that, for example, there is an object called building. Now we want that we should inherit. Now there are many buildings name. One can be house, one can be plaza, what can be anything else, right? So buildings properties are inherited in house. House is also a building, right? And building is an inheritance. And what does a house contain? House contain a bathroom or a bedroom. Now it has this composition. It is its composition that this house contains bathroom. It can also be that this house contains a swimming pool. But a swimming pool can also be if there is any other attribute called, you can say, a restaurant, right? Then the composition of this restaurant can also be swimming pool, right? Now see, they are how they are linked. House also contain a bathroom, house also contain a swimming pool. But if there are two buildings, one is restaurant, one is house, restaurant also contains swimming pool and a bathroom. So they are similar.
I
Building,
think
building,
no.
Obviously, they are similar. How they are not similar? A restaurant also contain a bathroom or not?
Yes.
A restaurant may also contain a swimming pool.
Oh,
Same as house.
yes, I think so.
Means there is one object called building. It has another two objects called house and a restaurant. And the properties of house and a restaurant are same. It can be same. So an object creating an other object, and they are interlinked. Their properties are interlinked. The example of inheritance can be that there are your parents and you are three or four siblings. You all may not have all the properties same, all the nature same, but one thing can be same in both of you, right? Maybe your talking style, maybe your eating habits, or maybe your study intentions or the study concentration. It can be same. So your parents are one object, but the siblings are two separate objects, but their properties are also same because of the one object that is on the top. Now do you understand my concept?
Yes, miss.
Now if we go on the further, now how many objects are there now? When I have explained, one is your parents, then two of you siblings. Now if we go forward, your children maybe have some specifications or properties as your brother. You can link that, no, you have that property that your uncle has, and maybe his child has some property that is linked to you. So inheritance is the property that is transferred from one thing to another, and it interlinks your other objects also. That can be attribute also, then they can also be a object. So that the inheritance work. Understand clearly?
Yes, miss.
Good. Now, what is binding? Binding is the process of linking some property of an object to another object in your application. For example, you can bind a text box to a text property of a button so that when the button is selected, the text box value gets set to whatever was entered into that text box. If you are binding a web application, okay, now first I will clear the text box section. Now it means there is a button and there is a text box. Now this button says the total amount. Okay. Now it means that you have binded this button with this text box. When you click on total, the total amount you have calculated above should be shown here. So what does it mean? This button is binded with this text box. This text box is of no use if you don't use this button. It can only be function if you used this button. So they both are binded. For example, you have a class. If you want to learn, you will attend the class, right? If you won't attend the class, how would you learn? Now, these two in calculator, when you will enter the numbers and you want them to add, what will you do? First, you will press the add button, then it will add the numbers, right? So the buttons are connected to the text box. Whatever you will press, then they will perform. That is called a binding. Now, if you are building a web application and you want a form to submit data to your server, bind that form to a button will make it much easier to handle and debug your code as it's executed on the server. Now, there are two types of binding, dynamic binding and static binding. Now, what you do if you want to submit, for example, your assignment, you have written all your assignment, you have uploaded, your assignment will not be sent it to me until unless you press the send button. Then I will check and I will debug or I will find out the mistakes. But there are two types of binding. One in programming, there is dynamic binding and a static binding. Now, what is static and what is dynamic? Dynamic binding occurs when the value of an object changes and this causes the value of another property of an object to change. For example, now dynamic is a late binding runtime and method overriding. For example, you can take is the prices of any product, you can say. A function will not be updated unless until some of the prices, if you are visiting any store online, I would say. So you have a function, you have a program coding of any of the mart where you buy the things online. If something's price has been increased or decreased, what does that mean? That means that the data has been updated, right? Data will be updated, and only it will be updated when you will again open your that application. Then you will see the updated prices. Unless until if you are not opening that app, how will you know the prices has been updated, right? Or the programmer just update the information, but he doesn't click on the update button, so it won't be update, right? So it is method overriding and runtime, that the programmer can change the prices or update its program when other people are using that system. It's not like that the program is being updated but other people can't use it. You still are using, and when you refresh your page, or if you're using an application and you are buying something, for example, you are buying eggs or you are buying some chocolates for yourself, and you are just adding it in a cart. But while you were adding or selecting the chocolates, the prices have been changed. So either the page will automatically update, refreshed by the programmer who has updated the code, and you are also using, that means runtime, while you are using it. And or when you will add it in a cart and you will just continue to shopping, and then you will see its real prices. So your program doesn't need to stop there. It's a runtime program, and you can see the changes while your program is running. That is called dynamic binding. Now, what is static binding? Occurs when one property of an object is set directly without changing another property. Static binding means makes it very easy for developers to understand where their code is executing in the application, because it gives them control over exactly what values get set in each property. Now, static means you have fixed the changes before. Before explaining the program, or before starting the program, everything is static. Static means a definite fixed amount that is set once. It cannot be changed. A method can be overloaded. You can make another method called updation, but otherwise you can't update that thing. Understand? And that updation is done when there is a compile time.
Yes, miss.
When you are compiling, when you are
Yes.
coding, when you are finalizing the coding. Now, here are the properties. Like static is early binding. You bind when you are making the program. Then in the compile time, you have to bind them, or you have to fix the updation. And method can be overload, but it cannot be override. It cannot run same method, but you have to make another method for updation. You can't use the same code. And what is dynamic? It is late binding. You can bind it anytime you can. You can use it at runtime, and method, that specific price method can be override. You can override that method. These are the two basic changes. Three differences of static and dynamic. Now, on the other hand, dynamic binding can be more difficult because it enables you to change properties based on use input or other events within your application. Dynamic binding also has more potential for errors because changing one property can cause unexpected changes in others' properties and can even lead to crashing your app if something went wrong during execution. Do you understand this line?
Yes, miss.
No, you don't, I think so. Okay, explain me. What did you understand from this line? That how dynamic chip binding can cause error? or it can crash your application?
By overriding?
May have experienced some time that you are using an application and the updation of Play Store is running. For example, you are using Instagram, and at the back end, your Instagram has is being updated. So what did it happen? Sometimes the application stopped. There is a notification written something went wrong. Do you want to close the app? Or the app currently stopped displaying, and then it again appear. What is that? Because of dynamic binding. There was some updation that cannot run on runtime. There was some error maybe, or some issue with it, can be your with your mobile model, or it can be through internet, or anything can be caused. So for some time your system can be stopped, and then it will be rescheduled after that. Does this happen with you or not?
This is happened on Instagram. It was not working
Yes, so
for
that is
1 week.
dynamic binding. Because there is some error, there is more possibilities. Like last days in Pakistan, there was some issues with the WhatsApp messaging were not delivered. There was internet, there was very good internet, everything was good, but there was some issues with the WhatsApp. It can be of with more users, or maybe you can say there was some error in the application and they were trying to fix it. That's why your work stopped. So that is because of dynamic binding. Because they were updating, or they were removing errors, I would say, or they were making some changings while people are using that app. So at runtime, when you change something, if you have even a mistake of a dot in a programming language, that can cause crashing your app, that your app will not work. It can stop execution. Then you have to again see that where I have done wrong. But in static binding, you know that. In dynamic, there is no method overloading. There is not a separate method. It is method overriding. That if you have a class of a price, so you are making changes in the price section. Now what will the issue will occur, that you are changing the same method, but in static you have a separate method for price updation. So it won't affect the earlier prices, or it won't affect the previous application. So method overloading is good, but method overriding sometimes make errors and crash your app, and it can stop the execution as well. Then there is a message passing. The ability to pass data around a program is a very important aspect of object-oriented programming. Okay, if an application is meant to be pass a message, and what if it can't? So that is not a programming thing, right? So object-oriented programming makes sure that you can send any message through one object to another object, because it is object oriented language. It based on objects. The base of object oriented is objects. So we will focus on all the attributes or the things that an object can do, or an object should do. The basic idea behind passing data is that each object keeps track of its own state, but also knows how to pass its states along to other objects. When an object wants to send some information to another object, it can simply do so by calling the appropriate method on that other object. This allows objects to communicate with each other and build complex chains of objects together. One way in which objects can communicate is through messaging passing. Messaging passing is essentially the act of sending a message from one object to another. Each object has a specific address that other objects can use to send them message. Now, what do you do when you want to send someone a message? Obviously, you know his or her address. Address can be its mobile number, its email address, or anything. Because without that, you won't be able to send or receive message, right? So obviously each object has its own address. For example, you can say address can be, if it is an object of a person, we will take the previous example of a person and a job. One object is person, second object is job. Now, what if we want a specific person's name, if we entered and we know its job also? So obviously the job section will send the information to the job object that I want the information of this job, of this person. And if we want the list of developers in the job, what will we do? We will enter that we want the job is equal to developer and all information of that person's. So what will it do? First, the developers list will be out, and then through the person's name, that person's identity will also be shown. So that is a message that is sent through object B to object A, or to object A to object B. Do you understand?
Yes, miss.
Okay.
Yes, miss. Yes.
Okay, when an object receives a message, it simply reads the message and does whatever it needs to do based on the message. In this way, the entire program can be made up of multiple objects communicating with each other. With message passing, it becomes much easier for programs to become more complex and for more objects to interact with each other in interesting ways. Message passing is one of the most basic forms of communication in OOPS, but it's still an important concept to understand if you want to write more sophisticated programs. Now, I will ask you one thing. Now, tell me, if there are two objects like a person and a job, now, will it be convenient for us to use a person's job details in a person's object? That there is a person name, first name, last name, age, gender, and then job, and then all the details of the job. When we have another object called job, can we mix these information and will it be good for us to use?
I think yes.
No. Why would? Because see, there is a person and a job, two objects. Why we are mixing their jobs? A person's attribute is what? Only their name, gender, and what is the job. We can't share all the job details like company name, salary, and all the things, right? These are not in the person's identity. Do you get it now?
Yes, miss.
If we want to know the person's, what that person do, that is the job section, that is an attribute of a person. But what if we want the what, in which company he do job, which salary he is getting, how many years he have spent in that company? Will be we will be adding all these things in person's object attributes? No, because that is not a person attribute, that is a company and job attribute. So we can't mix them, but we can interlink them. We can take out the information through other objects, because these objects are interlinked. We can interlink them. That's why we use objects to not to make this all a complex thing. Like we use in earlier times, the diaries and or the registers were used. So it becomes very confusing that if we have to add another new attribute, oh no, this page has been ended, now we have to make another diary, or we have to make another register for that. That was a complex thing. But now we have the facilities, so we can add whatever we want, we can subtract whatever we want, we can interlink many objects, and we can make it one answer, because we are using object oriented programming, who can ease our complexity through making different objects and their attributes and their properties and a different programming codes or a blocks of section, so we can easily pick that which information we want from that. Got it now?
Yes, miss.
Good. Now, what is advantages of using OOP? Moving to the advantages of OOP, we would like to say that there are many, as this is one of the core development approaches which is widely accepted. Let's see what are the advantages of OOP are offered to its users. First is reusability. Obviously, when we have different sections of each and every object and attribute, we can reuse the code at any time and we can pick that code very easily because we have named each and every code by its attribute, by its good name. It means reusing some facilities rather than building them again and again. This is done with the use of a class. We can use it n number of times, means many number of times as per our need. Data redundancy. This is a condition created at the place of data storage. You can say database, where the same piece of data is held in two separate places. So the data redundancy is one of the greatest advantages of OOP. If a user wants a similar functionality in multiple classes, he or she can go ahead by writing common class definitions for similar functionalities and inherit them. Data is not overwrite. If in database SQL, now SQL is a platform where you cannot use one name two times. If you are using classes, if you have a class sections, for example, in a school, you have 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, right? Now, what will you do? Obviously, you will not write it only 5 and you will write all the students' name, or you will write 5 at 5 times, 5 class, 5 class, 5 class. But you have to change something in that because overriding of name is not allowed in database. So you will change it like 5A, 5B, 5C, 5D, and then you will make the names of the students. So it would be easy if you wanted to find any student's name by its class. So data is not redundant. There is a proper way of data redundancy that you can take from wherever you code you want. You just have to enter that class name and you have to connect your program through database. You don't need to override. Like if you want are making a class for an application for a school, same now you want an application for the academy. You have a morning shift of school, you have a evening shift of academy, and some of the students are same of that school that are attending your academy. Now there are two software now, one is for school, one is for academy, but students may be same. Now, what will you do? You will write a blog or you will add in that student's information in school information that if there is a name of Ali, Ali is attending the academy, then you have an attribute called academy in that this student is attending the academy also, whether you write it in extracurricular activities. Then you can easily link the to academy code that a child, all list of all the children's whose extra activity is equal to academy. So all the list of the students who are in school and attending their academy, the list will be appeared in academy section, in academy program or an app coding. Do you understand that?
Yes, miss.
Good. Then there is code maintenance. This feature is more of a necessity of any programming languages. It helps user from doing rework in many ways. It is always easy and time saving to maintain and modify the existing codes by incorporating new changes into them. As I have told you that the changing of code or updation of code is very easy in OOP because of its objects and classes classification. You can maintain easily your code. Then there is security. With the use of data hiding and abstraction mechanism, we can filter out limited data to exposure, which means we are maintaining security and providing necessary data to view. Now, due to the data hiding, I would say, but abstraction, the quality of data or the accuracy of data and how we want to show that data. We have that option. We don't need to show all of the students' data or all of the company's workers' data. If we just want the new workers' data to be shown, that is on ourselves, that what data we want to show. So the other data of our company or organization will be saved. It won't be shown until unless we don't want to be shown. Then there are design benefits. If you are practicing on OOPS, the design benefit a user will get is in terms of designing and fixing things easily and eliminating the risk, if any. Here, the object-oriented programming forces the designers to have a long and extensive design phase, which results in better design and a fewer flaws. After a time, when a program has reached some critical limits, it is easier to program all the non-OOPS ones separately. Now, there are some very good benefits of OOP. Then, first, you can code. You can code according to yourself. You can test the code. You can finalize the code, and then you can design. And it's not important that you design according to only the user. No, your design will be according to your coding, and it is the main benefit of a user, because OOP has many designs, OOP has many parts, and the design will be according to the code. And you can change the design at any time because of the coding process and a class attribute process, that you can change the design, but it won't affect your code. Then there is better productivity. With the above mentioned facts of using the application definitely enhances its user overall productivity. This leads to more work done, finishing a better program, having more inbuilt features, and easier reading, writing, and maintaining. An OOP programmer can stitch new software objects to make completely new programs. A good number of libraries with useful functions in abundance make it possible. Now, because of all of the above characteristics and advantages, your productivity will be good because you have so much to do. You have so much, I would say, so much ways or so much advantages. You can make your program better and to show your program that it is a better product to use, to explain your objects, to show your objects. And then there is easy troubleshooting. Now, what is easy troubleshooting? Let's witness some common issues or problems any developer face in their work. First, is this the problem in the widget file? Is this a problem in the whale plumber? Will I have to trust through the C file? Now, commenting on all these issues related to code. What are these? Widget file may be, these are the files when you build a code, when you build a program. So many times something has gone wrong, which later becomes so brainstorming for the developers to look. Where the error is, relax, working with OOP language, you will know where to look for. This is the advantage of using encapsulation in OOP. All the objects are self-constrained. With this modality behavior, the IT teams get a lot of work benefits as they are now capable of working on multiple projects simultaneously, with an advantage that there is no possibility of code duplicity. Now, as I discussed, everything is based on first is object, the second is class. Now, these are some files that maybe appear while using other programming languages. But when you are using OOP, you have main every class and object's named file. So it won't be difficult to find out where the issue is because of the object or the attributes class's name. You can easily put one file into another code also, into another project also. You can easily open and debug the code also, that where is that extra file gone, or what this file means. You don't need to remember each and everything in OOP because of the classes and objects names. Then there is polymorphism, flexibility. Have you understood till 14th slide?
Yes, miss.
Are you sure?
Yes, miss.
So what is polymorphism? You behave in a different way if the place or surrounding gets changed. A person will behave like a customer if he is in the market. The same person will behave like a student if he is in a school, and as a son or a daughter if it put in a house. Here we can see that same person showing different behavior every time in the surrounding are changed. This means polymorphism is flexible and helps developer in a number of ways, its simplicity and extensibility. Now, polymorphism means one thing can behave in many manner when you change the situation. It is so simple to change an object's behavior or its existence when you change the surroundings. Means one thing, if it is in a one code and you pick that code and put it in another program, it will behave like one. It will adjust itself, the program will adjust itself into the new program according to their functionality. That is called polymorphism. That changing of platform doesn't matter. Your code will adjust and behave like in which surrounding or in which code it is. It can change its functionality according to the programming situation. That is called polymorphism. Okay. Then there is problem solving. Decomposing a complex problem into smaller chunks or discrete components is a good practice. OOP is specialized in this behavior as it breaks down your software code into bite-sized, one object at a time. The broke components can be reused in solution to different other programs, both less and more complex, or either they can be replaced by the future modules that relate to the same interface with implementation details. Now, this you should know that is problem solving easy in OOP or difficult?
I think it easy.
Yes. Why it is easy?
It helps us to find by in present.
So problem solving is really easy because we have made the attributes and projects and classes, so we can easily debug that where the issue is, because all the code has been broken down into many pieces in a very smaller pieces, so the problem solving chances is very high. We can solve every problem or each problem in a very good manner and in a very easier way. So these all were 9 advantages of object oriented language. Are Have you understood all of the points, or is there any question?
Yes, I have understood all the point.
Encapsulation in OOP is the concept of binding fields, object state, and methods together as a single unit. As I have told you, into encapsule to connect more things in one place. Programming languages such as Java use encapsulation in the form of classes. A class allows programmer to create objects with variables and behaviors. Variables are the data and behaviors are the method and function. Since a class consists of data and methods packed into a single unit, it is an example of encapsulation. When you decide what type of data and what type of method you are using on that data, these two are binded, means these two are encapsulated. Okay. Obviously, when we write methods, it means we need some data to perform that method on. And then we have the data. What we're going to do with the data if we are not performing anything on that? Then these two are interlinked. When two things are interlinked and methods can't be performed without data, and without method, data is of no use. They both need to be in one place. That is called encapsulation. They are packed, they are interlinked, they are binded with one another. Okay?
Oh, yes, miss.
Then encapsulation in OOP may also mean restricting direct access to certain components of an object so that user cannot access the state values for all variables of a particular object. Okay, if there is two things, that data and a method, and some data we just want that data to be shown, not to be changed or updated, so we restrict that person. For example, I would say when you are using a Facebook account, you deactivate your account. Now, after deactivating your account, No, you have pressed the data button of deactivated, which has the method of deactivating your data. And what is the minimum time of deactivating your to reactive your account? It is, I think, 24 or 48 hours, right? So
Maybe
that is a restriction. And you cannot change your name again and again as much time as you want. There is some on also a time limit of changing your name in Facebook. So these are some restrictions that we made to restrict our users, that this data cannot be displayed more times or can't be used very frequently. This is the restrictions of OOP. Therefore, encapsulation can be used to hide data, members, and functions associated with an. So, in a large organization, there are several departments like sales, accounts, production, etc., each with its own responsibilities and functions. Now, consider a situation where a member of the accountant section needs all the sales data of a particular month. In such case, the accountant's official cannot access the sales data directly. Instead, they have to contact some members of the sales department and request them to furnish the required data. Thus, the situation here is similar to encapsulation, where the sales data and the officials who can directly access them are wrapped under a single domain called sales department. Now, sales, accounts, production, there are many departments, but only we will retrieve the data that we want. We will not enclose all of the data about sales, accounts, production, no, or about all the years. We want the particular month and we will take out the data of that just particular month. Second example is when we log into our email account, many backend processes takes place over which we have to control. The password we enter is retrieved in an encrypted form and verified, after which we get access to our account. Thus, we have no way of knowing how our password gets verified, keeping our account safe from misuse. It is another classic real-time analogy of encapsulation where users have restricted access to certain features. Now, when we use our email accounts, does they show us that how our email and password get verified and we got access to our inbox? Does they?
yes.
Which website allows that?
In our recent someone has been login in
No, I'm
email inbox.
asking that does they show which coding or which process they have implemented to verify our code?
No, 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 no.
Yes, I'm asking that. No, that
No.
thing is not needed, right? What we need, we just want to need that we get authorization of our email account and we can use that. We don't know what is happening before or at the back end, how our code is being verified, where our code has been gone, where our code has been saved, how we are showing these inbox and all of our messages. We just want that we log in and we can see our emails. That's it. We don't know what is happening at the back end and we don't want to know, because what we want to read our emails, and that thing we are doing. All the details and the privacy are encapsulated that we don't want to know and they won't show us, right? Now, do you understand about the encapsulation?
Yes, miss.
Okay, good. So I will end my class here and we will continue with the inheritance part in our next class. Okay?
Okay, inshallah.
Now, do you have any questions regarding this or have you cleared?
No, miss, I have cleared off. The
Oh,
same thing has been repeated out two, three times.
okay.
Okay, Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.